Uh-huh.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Full Course Yellow, the in-pit lane aftershow. If you're joining us straight out of the Channel 31 program, you're welcome. I hope you enjoyed our look at Mallala. As we said, we'll be back there again next week. There was so much to see at Mallala over the weekend that we didn't just get one show out of it. We got two, so that'll be next week on the program. We'll be looking at some of the other categories apart from the sports sedans. But it was great to see all those sports sedans racing around there and to hear them again. And once again, thank you to the people who made that possible. It was in particular Mark Goldsmith, who organised a car for us to get around, because that was the big expense. There was simply not a hire car to be had in Adelaide, or what there were ridiculously expensive. So Mark managed to get not the last car, the last van. We got the in-pit lane camera equipment, which was in basically my carry-on bag, was being transported in considerable comfort and style on the weekend in the back of a great big van. We could have live streamed out of that, but anyway, it was lots of fun. So thank you to everybody at the the Sporting Car Club of South Australia. Beautiful venue, amazing club rooms, and an incredible library, and there'll be a bit of that on the program next week on In Pit Lane. But anyway, if you're watching us at the new later time of 9:30, coming in after because we did after last week, we moved to the new time of 9 o'clock with the main show, so we're a little bit late. So hopefully it's not past your bedtime, but we'll wrap this up sort of fairly quickly, I think. Find out what's happening, but once again, everybody's with us again. So we welcome them all.
So we're not allowed to swear now, are we?
No, we're still not allowed to. No, we're still not allowed to.
No, we've already copped a rap out of Knuckles already last night down at the Mr. Boogeyman bar for a copyright infringement. Let's not get any more trouble in 1 week.
Yes, the wonders of the YouTube algorithm. I mean, it was I got in last night and I unloaded everything, and I had opened up my email, and it's got message from YouTube. Your channel has received a copyright strike, and it's like,
you win $1 million.
I thought you are kidding me. and I had to check, and it wasn't the band, because I thought they might have mixed something up with the band, or because that sort of thing sometimes happens. But no, it was after the band had finished and we're packing up. We didn't sort of click off straight away, and of course they turned the house music up again.
Yeah, atmospheric music
came up again, and bang, we got done for. It was once again within about 25 seconds of it turning on that we got clobbered. So we've got to sort of watch that next week. By the way, if you're in Melbourne and you want to come down to the Mr. Boogeyman bar, Wednesday nights, we're calling it the tune-up. It's basically we're recording our bands at the Mr. Boogeyman bar.
Come, join the show.
Come. We had a great night last night. We had the Mason brothers on last night. Or Mason Boys. Mason Boys.
That's 1-1. I got it wrong last night too. I forgot the boys.
You've got the boys. I went to school with some people called the Mason brothers, who had a particularly fearsome reputation.
I'm thinking. I didn't ask him, but I think it's probably comes away from the saying Freemasons. They might have derived it from that. So
it's probably more from a mason jar, which was used to transport whiskey in.
Yes, that was he said. Yeah,
in the US.
Yeah. That's basically what it said, yeah.
Freemasons aren't very musical. I used to work with them.
Oh, there you go. That's one to Chris. One love to Chris for the night. Crowd 0. There you go. Good evening, Cal. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, g'day, Mark. How are you? Thanks for joining us, mate. Much appreciate. Mark was earlier in the night. Mark got in touch, was watching the test and tune from Willowbank coming up this week. I went over. If you go after, don't do it now, but after we finish, go to the Willowbank Raceway Facebook page and have a look at some footage of a run from Test and Tubes this afternoon. It is it is a great run. It's fantastic stuff. So that's
Is it a full session or a highlights package?
The bit I saw was only a highlights package from today, one run in particular, but it was fantastic. Wheel standing, old Chevy, looked like a Nova or something. Just yes, spectacular.
Excellent.
Spectacular stuff. Anyway, the weekend, as I said, I was being out at Mallala and at Adelaide. I was away from the computer. I was away from email and Facebook, and also away from television and Foxtel and all these things. And as I was saying, I have no idea what happened in the wonderful world of supercars and even Formula One. I sort of caught up with Formula One a bit when I got home, but to be honest with you, I didn't realise until today, until I actually went looking for it, I didn't know who won or anything about supercars on the weekend. Pete, did you catch up with the supercars and what went? Fill me in. What went on?
It was pretty straight.
G'day, Mark. How are you? Thank you. Thank you again. Just quickly, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Go ahead, Pete.
It was a pretty straightforward. They were pretty straightforward races. Jamie Whincup on the Sunday. Jamie Whincup won one race. Chaz Mostert won the other. Shane, I think, from memory, did win on the Saturday.
Correct.
But he didn't. He didn't get the clean sweep. So
I think during Shane's interview on the Saturday after the results of the first one, he said that they'd used up a respectable amount of tyres in their allocation, and that to get where they were for qualifying and for the first race. So he said he was going to be sort of having to nurse his car and its ability on the Sunday, and probably have to sacrifice one race at least. So we knew pretty much then that he couldn't do a clean sweep. So he gave a really big hint that he would struggle at least on one of the races on the second day.
Even on Saturday, I don't think he qualified. I don't think he was on pole. I think Waters was. So, he didn't actually qualify up the order. He did in the sense that he was sort of about seventh, I think. But, he wasn't sort of in the top two or three.
Yeah, it's interesting. I must admit, having a look at the one thing I did catch up with was some disquiet from people out at the track in Adelaide. And if I was the taxpayers of Tasmania paid a pretty penny for that event. And judging by they got a 2-day event, and I've got nothing against it. I think 2-day events are actually not a bad idea. But in terms of the support categories, they got the super trucks in a small field of super trucks, and I think the Aussie race cars, and I think that was about it.
That was it.
If I was going along as a spectator and I'm paying the best part of $100 or so to turn up, and apparently one of the criticism that I heard was that not only were there not many support races, but there were these huge gaps where sort of the Aussie race cars ran at some ungodly hour of the morning, and finished at about 9:15 or something, and then there was nothing on track for about 2 hours until the first of the supercar.
Well, there's been some professional journalism that's been out for the general public to see during the week, because the natives are restless when it comes to the supercars events. And there's been an announcement by supercars throughout the week that they've apparently spoken to the drivers and teams, and there's a much love, or I suppose want, for the 2-day events. It suits the teams better and suits the drivers better. I don't think the general consensus when it was reached out to the drivers agreed with that. So supercars have said they have spoken to teams, spoken to drivers, spoken to the paddock, and we're going to run more 2-day events. You're going to see less 3-day coverages going forward. And there's been a huge backlash by the public saying they are so self-righteous, like you were probably hearing the rumblings over there in Adelaide. So, yeah, obviously the smoke signals have reached over there at Mallala. And the public wants to see 3-day events with support categories, with lots more fanfare, with atmosphere. They don't want just 2 or 3 races of super sprints over 2 days and then go home. They want more fun there.
The problem that they've got. Yep, you Stuart.
Yeah, the question would be: are they also getting a reduction in the ticket price to come through the front gate if it's only a 2-day event?
No.
Right. I mean, it's fair for the public to be rightfully annoyed if they're still paying the prices of a 3-day event and only getting 2 days of entertainment.
Yeah,
let's face it, this is entertainment. This is not motorsport for those categories. It is an entertainment, and they have to treat it the same as you would for any other paying audience.
True.
I think the other problem of not having the main problem I see of not having a 3-day event is it's hard enough to sort of beat up publicity for it now. Because as I said, I was totally out of the loop. I mean, I was flat out over the weekend, and I had very little time to look. But there wasn't Foxtel in my hotel room. I wasn't online. I didn't take a computer or a laptop or anything with me because I needed a travel light, and I was taking our cameras and all and tripod and all the rest of it. So I didn't have a computer with me. I didn't have internet connection. I did have it on the phone, but you wouldn't have known that there was a race meeting happening on the weekend. I mean, there was nothing I saw anywhere, and certainly, I mean, it didn't. I was at a racetrack, and I didn't hear it was a historic meeting, but I certainly didn't hear a single person out at Mallala saying, "Oh, do you know what's happened to Tasmania?" Or who won the race? Who won Saturday's race? Who won Sunday's first race? And all that. No, it was just an event that just seemingly didn't matter to anybody. And I think that the thing is, if you run on Friday, it gives you an extra day of possible news stories. And the thing is, right now, for people, once again, as I keep saying, for people like us, there's nothing we can hang our hat on. If you're not a rights holder, there's no news there's nothing we can run in the lead up to the event. I mean, they don't do any pre-publicity. There's no cherry. You can't cherry pick. There's nothing to grab. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that came up, as I said, and I wish it had come through earlier because last week we were struggling for content. But on the Wednesday, DJR put out a video news release with Anton and Will, previewing the weekend and with quotes about what was coming up. But I don't know. Apart from Speed Cafe and possibly Auto, I don't know where that would, and of course Foxtel, in terms of the non-rights holders, I don't know where the hell that would have been run, because I don't recall, I don't watch a lot of news, but I couldn't see them running it on any of the major news services. There's no sort of dedicated sport. There's no show like Sports Tonight anymore. That's gone, so they're not going to run it there. So unless we run it, and it was way too late for us to run, where are they going to get the publicity? And if it's anything like the situation here in Melbourne, even when we've got a primetime free-to-air television show in Melbourne, even if they're racing in Melbourne, nobody will come on and talk about it.
Yep.
Anyway,
I could point out that realistically they don't have a great deal of relevance to the fans if people aren't having that discussion at tracks. I mean, I can recall times when we've been at Sandown and people have wanted to know what's happening at other events around the country, and if they're not asking, it means the core grassroots fans don't give a damn about that category anymore.
And it's a lack of interest, full stop. It's just painstakingly.
Well, they don't know it exists.
And you also, you can talk, okay, so for example, PR issues there, Stuart. You can go to Sandown and there's the large media centre. You can turn it into a shoebox, or you can turn it into a bloody 1,000 people conference, because you've got all the petitions off along the media area across the top there. But what it also does has, as we noticed many times when we've been there for any event, it has a lot of TV screens across the walls. And generally speaking, you will have other sporting events on those TV screens while we're watching the live timing of the events that we're at there on location. And the general interest of people walking up there and standing around those TV screens to see what's happening elsewhere is usually a good indication of them wanting to know what else is going on. But as Brett said, he was in Adelaide and no one gave a coyote on what was going on down south across the down past the Bight.
Also, I think as Tony said, I mean, essentially, and they've said it themselves, Supercars is now an entertainment property of Foxtel. It's ceased to, it really doesn't come in under the category of motorsport to the same extent that it used to be, because it is now very much seen as an entertainment package in much the same way as the WWE is, in terms of, it's sports entertainment. It's, it's like sport. It's, it has a sporting component, but it is also entertainment, and it's very much a product of Foxtel. And when you consider, like when I got home from, on Saturday night, I mean, I thought, I was sitting in the hotel room. There was no, I finally managed to find somewhere that was open to get something to eat, because I wasn't feeling well, and I went straight back to the hotel room. Lay in the hotel room. I thought, I'll flick on Channel 7 and I'll watch the Supercars, and so I went online to see what time they were on, and that was 1 o'clock in the morning.
And Pete brought that up a week or two ago. Didn't you, saying there was you categorically saw it was mentioned earlier in the year that they were going to guarantee that the highlights package would be, if it wasn't a full broadcast, would be played later on that day before the 12 o'clock deadline. And what did you say, Pete?
Yep, they don't do it, and it's going back to the bad old days when Channel 7 had it first time around, where they used to put it on. They used to put it on the same day, but it used to be 10:30 at night.
Yeah, they're pushing it back further and further.
Yeah. And I don't mind the fact that they've got, that they put it on late at night. I mean, as long as it is late at night, but early the next day, that's just ridiculous. It's clearly, you can't tell me that on all of the channels, particularly on 7 Mate, that there isn't something. They're not running something that is that highly rated or that important, and it would indicate to me that the Channel 7 are interested in the supercars for one reason and one reason only. And that is that they want Bathurst. That's the only thing they were ever interested in. I mean, even in the days of old when they were running it, that's what they wanted it for. They want Bathurst. Bathurst
and a little bit of Gold Coast, Brett, as well too. A little bit of, but they're tied in a neat bow together as well. Anyway, at the end of the year, usually.
Let's just address Mad Cow Mike's suggestion there. We would never suggest something as cynical as the winners are chosen beforehand. Would absolutely never. We wouldn't do it. We wouldn't do it. We know it's possible, but we wouldn't do it.
Prioritisation.
We can't afford the lawsuit of that.
Stuart,
we can't afford that lawsuit. No, just a lawsuit from Rupert's Chaos.
Well, speaking of lawsuits and banter and bitterness and Twisted and the power brokers that are in supercars, before we run out of the oxygen in the room for supercars anyway, we've almost been going 20 minutes on that, is the wildcard entry. Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I've already winding it up already. The wildcard entry, which has been an official release this week, that there is someone going to get one. However, Patterton jumped on Twitter in the last 48 hours, and some would say maybe a little bit of jealousy, some would say maybe bitter. So I think he's got the Little River Band, What About Me, playing on repeat in his household at the moment. He wants
just quickly. That was moving pictures.
Oh, sorry, moving pictures. My apologies. Yeah. Moving pictures. What about Shannon Knoll? Did an extremely bad cover of it. However, it still gets him around Australia in pubs. He wants to put in a wild card too. He is not joking. He is semi-serious, and he's throwing it out there to a couple of drivers, including one Greg Murph, that manages to be able to steer a car around for promotional reasons at tracks. And he wants to throw a kid in. So someone's come up with, well, obviously Russell Ingall's come up with the concept, or someone wants to back him in that. Mr. Patterson wants to, if they can do it, why can't I? That's not fair. I should be able to do this too. What's going on? This is an idea that I should have had. Why they got it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the fact that that Russell's coming back. I mean, there's been some people online. I mean, Russell's a good driver, and Russell will do a really good job. And people saying, yes, it's true that it's keeping possibly keeping out another young guy. But I mean, those young guys, are they going to do that job as well as Russell? Russell's experience.
You need that 50-50.
Russell will do a professional, even though he hasn't done anything for a while. Although he did have a run, he did end up having a run in the trucks because young Nash Morris got a bad back in the super trucks. I mean, and is that any? Surprise? Thank God I'm not driving the damn thing. I mean, I hurt myself last night hitting a speed bump, taking Darren home down Menzies Avenue. So,
Robert Menzies Avenue.
Just on that regard, just a reminder that there's that old axiom about youth and enthusiasm being beaten by old age and treachery. And let's face it, Russell can be treacherous.
Russell can be treacherous.
This is good for viewership.
Yeah, he is, and he's an entertainer as well too. But I think when you put, as Brett said, you put two rookies in a car. And it's a recipe for McPhillamy Park going into the gravel with about 10 rollovers. When you put a great mix of experience and young, it's not only is it great media savvy, but it's also fantastic for the nurturing of young drivers. Keeps the old guys, a bit of energetic, young bones still going, and it's great. It's good to see. Plus, I think there should be more wild cards. There should be like a 2 or 3 raffle for them each year to be able to give it. They've got 24 cars going around Bathurst. When we saw a Bathurst 6 hour a couple of weeks ago, successfully put 60 plus cars on the track and negotiate wellage.
They could easily have, 40 supercars on the track. If they just opened it up to the Super 2. Like they did in the past,
and if you look when Paul Morris was with Chaz Mostert, he came back and was with Chaz Mostert. They won the race, so
yeah.
Wild card of some classic drivers would have some potential. You could put Brad Jones in there, Longhurst maybe.
JB
that would
again.
Be interesting.
I'm talking about Jason Barg. JJ Barg put Bargs in. He's been running around in
both of the
TCR.
JBs. Both of the JBs would be good.
Yeah, and it's I wouldn't be surprised with Aaron going so well at the moment that Glenn wouldn't even mind jumping in and maybe a father son that could possibly happen if Glenn's up to it.
That would get attention. That would get attention.
Because that was originally a plan years ago. Unfortunately, it sort of all happened too late. But that was something that that Mario and Michael Andretti, they were hoping to have like 3 generations of Andretti race at Le Mans. They were hoping to have Mario, Michael, and Marco all in a car together in the GTE car at Le Mans. But Mario just they never got it together. Mario got a bit too old for it. And it didn't end up happening. But you can certainly have Glenn hasn't raced for a long time, but he's certainly he's certainly not old. I mean, he's still. I'm sure with a bit of training and it'd come back to him pretty quickly. He's handled himself very well. So that'd be interesting.
There's always another Brabham kicking around as well.
There is. There's an endless supply of Brabhams. Oh, you're right there, Stuart. However, look, strictly speaking, all jokes aside, which we love doing, we love taking the piss man out of ourselves all the time, which is great. That's part of our show that Brett encourages with us. But if you had 3 to 5 wild cards per Bathurst year with, a 6 month to 12 month process where, you're going to have a quality car on that track as well, though, too, which is competitive, that could finish anywhere in the top 10. If you start stretching out further than, say, 5 cars or 3 to 5 cars, you're starting to bring in that old technology, and you're starting to compromise the not the brand, but you're starting to compromise what cars on the track for the competitors, because they've obviously got a strict criteria where there's got to be, in-car viewing. There's got to be, what do you call the GPS modems and units underneath the cars. They've got to be up to that Gen 2 spec or soon to be Gen 3 spec.
Which makes me wonder, would a Nissan GTR be up to the same sort of speed as today's field? Maybe a classic wild card might be.
Well, they might have to water it down.
Turn that boost up on a Sierra. Turn that boost up on a Sierra.
They would never allow that, because that could get a little embarrassing, especially if it turned out to be a wet race. I mean, even a Group A, a properly prepared Group A, GTR, with all-wheel drive on a wet Bathurst could be very, very embarrassing to the supercars. So that ain't never going to happen. By the way, I will just say I can't say too much, because this is in terms of Russell and Brock. Be watching tomorrow morning when you wake up. There will be another announcement tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, it's been announced, but unfortunately I can't say anything because it has been embargoed until tomorrow morning. But something coming up this weekend, so just keep an eye out for this weekend, because something is actually happening this weekend that I can't tell you about at this stage, involving Mr. Ingle. So you'll see that tomorrow. You'll see that tomorrow morning. So no doubt Speed Cafe will run it. I mean, they've got the inside running on all those things. They get
someone's got a bad back, and Russell might have to sit in someone else's seat again.
Let's just say that it involves a new car, a brand new vehicle that neither of them have ever raced before. So
okay, well,
a new mark. Oh, that's all I'll say. That's all new mark for both.
Gotcha.
That's all I will say.
I just put one and one together, and I got 10. So yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
As Mark is saying, they can put Ricardo. This brings us nicely. Lovely segue, Mark. This brings us nicely onto Formula One. Has Daniel made a big mistake in jumping from Renault? He played second fiddle at Red Bull. Was the man briefly at Renault, and then decided to jump ship. And now it looks like he could end up playing second. I know it's only a couple of races in, but. It looks like he could be playing.
I did say Renault would be on an up curve. I did say it.
Yeah. I was really surprised when he jumped. Pete, you had a look at the thing. I mean, Daniel's already put his hand up and said, when they basically said, move aside, Lando is faster than you. He's put his hand up and said, I understand that he was faster than me, and yes, I understand being asked to move aside.
Yes.
And Lando didn't disappoint either. He had a damn good race.
Well, he did let him through. They said, and they respectfully said to him on the radio, please let Lando through. Let's see him what he's like without your wash. And the commentators immediately did say that if he didn't improve anywhere better than what obviously Daniel did, that they would swap him back. So that was fair. So, and look, and that, I reckon that was a great, it doesn't happen too often, but it was a respectful way of doing it.
Yeah. Peter, how many laps did Lando keep Hamilton behind for towards the end of the race? That was some pretty impressive stuff at the end of the DRS zone.
Yeah, I think it was about 3 or 4, but I was sort of falling asleep. But I think it was about 3 or 4.
That exciting.
They stopped the race. They had to red flag the race, and then restarted. So it didn't finish until something like
Yeah, now that's something because I as I said, I didn't see the race because because of there's no free to air coverage over there, and by the time I'd got back. Yeah, I didn't see any of it apart from a few highlights on YouTube. But Pete, what's your take on the George Russell Valtteri Bottas situation? That's raised a few eyebrows.
It didn't look like from I think it was George's onboard footage. It didn't look like he hit anything. It looked like he span on because it was a wet dry race by that stage, and it looked like he got on some water and just span, and then ran into the side of Valtteri. So it was a racing incident, but it looked like it was him that hit Valtteri.
Bottas has got Bottas has got to be in on borrowed time. You would suspect he's not going to be re-signed for next year at this stage, unless he turns things around big time. He's clearly not in the same league as Hamilton. Never has been, and very few people are. But I mean, he at the moment it looks like he's just dropped his bundle completely, and it's probably time to say goodbye and bring George up, I suppose.
Well, there doesn't seem to be that conjecture when teammates are almost level on par with a little bit of upgrade packages, or they're stronger at a different track. So it's a cliche, but the Webber Vettel days when they were together at Red Bull for years, there'd be they're almost fighting for the number one position from week to week, even just in the media and psychologically. Whereas, I think Bottas, as you said many moons ago, Brett, even the last couple of years, and that he is resigned to the fact that he is number two, always will be number two, and he needs to keep his place in a high-profile team by ticking a whole lot of other boxes other than finishing on the top of the podium each week.
I think also, as Dave's saying as well, Dave, how are you? Saying that George made a marginal move, and the traditional venue, Imola has today or yesterday put up their hand and said, basically we've helped you guys out in terms of Formula One, during your darkest hours, as it were. We want to race next year, and so we can bring crowds back, and they think they should get another race. I mean, what do you think, Kenny? I mean, what do you guys think?
I think Imola has been neutered by that chicane. I mean, there's a couple of bumps into it that they still haven't fixed, and those are the bumps that destroyed the back end of Senna's car.
The drivers were complaining.
They've neutered the track by making it too slow. Imola was always one of the fast-flowing tracks, and right now it's, let's do a passing under brakes and that is where that incident with George and Bottas has happened, right there in that braking zone, and he put wheels off on the grass, and that spat him sideways.
Speaking of,
it does need to be wider.
Speaking of bad, it hasn't even been built yet, but it will be a bad venue. They've announced tentatively for the 2022 calendar that they're going to Miami. And from what I understand, listening to...
I saw the map of that, and that's horrid.
Yeah,
have you got a graphic, Stuart? You're great at bringing these things up. I haven't seen it yet.
Give me a second.
From what I hear from on Midweek Motorsport from Shay Adam, and Shay is a Florida girl. She lives in Florida, or did live in Florida for most of her life. She was saying that it is like in the middle of nowhere. It's not downtown. It's not sort of somewhere where most people are going to drive to. Apparently, it is out in the wilds of the suburbs, and nobody is going to go to it.
So what is it? A 10K track, 15K track? No, I'm kidding. If you got the ability to go in the middle of nowhere, it'd be at least 6K track, wouldn't
it? It goes around some American football team stadium. I can't remember what their name was.
Okay, mine. Okay.
Yeah, well, they're American, so they're not really important, are they?
Well, it's going to be a tropical climate for them, so it's going to, there'll be flamingos walking around everywhere, and girls with feathers on, and alligators.
Alligators and plenty of gators in Florida.
Yeah, you'll have plenty of those. What do you call them? Land and water machines everywhere, going left, right, and centre.
Here we go.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, well, you can punch that up yourself, Stuart.
Is some football stadium.
Okay, yes, I can take control.
Circumvents in the
and it goes back to the host, goes to Brett. I will just have to do it.
Stop fighting, you two. Stop fighting.
Yeah, we found a new wrinkle in StreamYard and we can play around with things. And I'm also trying to avoid being bitten by a cat at the same time. But you can see that you've got these, there's this one lovely set of curves that are all going to be nice and flowing. And then you've got this long straight that has got a hairpin at one end and a 90 degree at the other. That's just going to be boring.
No. It doesn't inspire confidence, does it? The Hard Rock Stadium. As Shay was saying, nowhere near downtown Miami. Basically out in the sticks, out in the industrial areas, and none of that sort of cool. The cool by the side of the semi Monaco vibe that you might have got with the palm trees and those beautiful sort of houses, painted houses, and old buildings around Miami, around Florida. None of that sort of.
Well, they've got plenty of time to spruce it up, haven't they? So, speaking of sprucing it up,
I think they did try and have it in that area with the palm trees and everything, but it got kiboshed by the local.
Well, they've got a stadium there in the middle of it. They should have put an entranceway for the pit and put the actual pit garages on the inside of the sporting facility. Then you could have the big Coliseum seating for everybody watching what's going on in the pits and big screens for watching what's going on everywhere else.
I like that. I like
the idea don't explore these things.
Saying about there's so many. Well, it would be a good idea. I mean, to sort of like they do a bit with both NASCAR, and they've been doing it Sandown with the retro round sort of thing. You could basically designate every year one round of the Formula that would visit a classic circuit that hasn't been used. If it was suitable, of course, you'd have to make sure it was suitable from a safety point of view.
Just spray some Roundup around for a couple of weeks beforehand, yeah.
I'd love to see. Well, they've talked about Kyalami a few times coming back. I know they're quite keen to get to Kyalami because they want to cover all of the bases in terms of the continents, and they would like to move into Africa and basically be, the FIA in particular, because there's a lot of politics, of course. Surprise! A lot of politics going on at the FIA, where they would really like to make the African delegates very happy by having a Formula One race on the African continent again. And Kyalami was always a great circuit, still a great circuit. So
we agree there should be a guest appearance circuit per year in, year out for the time being, as long as they can get it up to FIA standards, which has to be a reasonable amount, because there are obviously safety measures that have to be put in place these days. So, but look, if as you said, if one circuit got a year, or even on a rotating basis, one year and they get it 3 years later again, or 2 years later on a rotating basis, it's a little bit easier to maintain, and two, everyone knows where they stand, and they can have the standards in place for it to happen.
Is anyone going to spend that kind of money on a race circuit that is only going to get used once every
2 years? Yes,
well,
governments
hasn't Kyalami been getting used by the Classic series?
It's been used by a couple of the sports cars. The GT World Challenge, of which the Bathurst 12 Hours around has.
I know it takes a few months.
It's been purchased by Porsche and has been substantially rebuilt. So it is. I don't know. I'm not sure whether it's an FIA level 1 spec yet, but I believe that the plan was that it could be done, and it could be done at a reasonable sort of cost. So
that's the thing. Look at Albert Park. It takes a few months out, but they throw a street circuit together every single year and meet the specifications and qualifications for it. And other circuits around the world have to be slightly modified in the street format as well, though, too, to bring it all together. So if it's a circuit that's already in place, there's just going to be a certain amount of upgrades done to it every 2 years to be able to
Actually, just you mentioned, or just quickly mentioned street circuits.
There we go. There's Kyalami for everyone.
That's Kyalami.
Wow.
Kyalami there. So that's nice. I think we're battling over. We're switch at the same time.
Is it a go-kart circuit in the middle?
Yep.
Probably. Yep.
Yeah.
Certainly looks
got
like
sort of, if you're looking at it from the vibe, I mean, it looks like sort of like it's got sort of some Phillip Island vibes about it in terms of the way it goes.
Okay,
Yeah,
whose phone's not on silent?
Mine.
I heard it ring. Whose phone?
Yeah, that's
No, that was just a message coming in.
Come on, give him a break, Stuart. You've got a cat meowing in the background. I hear quite often. Yeah, so
that's probably a message that it's probably time for us to move on to MotoGP.
Well, speaking of just before
Segway!
we do that, thank you. Just before we do that, Doc mentioning
squealing tires.
Doc mentioning the infrastructure to build a street circuit. A very quick move, a very smart move by the Premier of South Australia, who was. Basically, he's been accused of trying to sabotage the return of the Adelaide 500. Of course, the Labor opposition in South Australia, have said that they plan, and they've signed a memorandum of understanding with Supercars to bring the race back if they get elected at the next election. Now, the current government have basically said, Glansell.
Franco, not the Polish and South Australia.
South Australia, yeah, Franco, come on, Mr. Franco, come to Adelaide and tell them Ben. And that's where. And guess who's listed as being the possible buyer of all that stuff? Just so happens it might just be the guy who owns the Bend Raceway. Yeah, so Sam Shaheen, who is a very, very, big employer, and has a lot of power in the state of South Australia.
Well, it's his backyard. He can do what he wants with it. If he wants to put an outdoor dunny, if he can put an outdoor dunny out there and put some rabbits around the paddock, he can do it if he wants.
Sam was at Mallala on the weekend. You'll see that on next week's show because they brought together the three. There are only three ever built, the three MR8 Formula 5000s. Sam owns one of them. Unfortunately, he broke the car in Friday practice, so we didn't see it out on the track. But we had the other two that were out there as well, and they lined them up for a photo opportunity on the Saturday, which we'll see next week. And we'll talk to Bill Hemming from of the Elfin Heritage Centre, who was racing there. He was racing one of the 5,000s. It was also Mark Goldsmith, who joined us before, and Bill also had their Elfin 400s out there. And unfortunately, Mark
one of those.
Yes, there it is. That's one that was there on the weekend, and you will see it. Well, you saw a little bit of it briefly tonight, but you'll see more of that car and others next week on In Pit Lane on Channel 31 at 9 o'clock. And
thank you for the segue there, Stuart. I reckon, from what you're saying, Brett, that you could maybe see an expansion on BP service stations in South Australia in the near future.
OTR is doing very well. They are everywhere. I mean,
Sam's got a BP service station out next to his track over there out at the Bend. Maybe we could see some more BP service stations around South Australia.
By the way, I will just
a note. Hang on, just a note on OTR. In Portland, of all places, they were the only place open in the middle of the night when a film crew was looking for food, and the service was fabulous. So if OTR want to expand, I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
By the way, also speaking of OTR, the Bend is the site for the next round of the South Australian State Racing Series, which is happening in about a month's time on May. I think it's May 15th and 16th. Now, it just so happens that I managed to stuff up a flight And so I actually have a return flight out of Adelaide on Monday, the 17th of May. So if somebody can get us across again to South Australia, perhaps Stuart and I and Doc could or a few could just drive across and do a couple of days at the Bend, and then I can fly back because I couldn't get the money back and they wouldn't let me change it. So I've either got to go, or I'm just going to have to sort of burn that and piss it up against the wall. But
on the subject of I do that on a van. I wonder how fast I could get a Voyager around the Bend. It's got all-wheel drive.
I'll come back in about 5 minutes' time and I'll chat about MotoGP. I'm just going to go get a holiday. I'll just get a holiday form. I'll be back. All right. Just going to go arrange some time off some work.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. So I think you might have a couple of extra guest appearances for the Bend, maybe mid-May around that time. So hint, nudge, nudge. Anyone out there? Brett would love to go over back to South Australia again. That's his second home at the moment. He's spending more time in SA than he is in Victoria.
Yeah, I tell you what, it wasn't. It wasn't.
We might have to move to Channel 44.
Yeah, well,
that's 2 weeks in a row, Richie. You've got a river in.
As I was saying last night at the Boogeyman Bar there, I was really surprised the number of people who came up to me at Mallala, and even in the pub that I stayed. I walked into the pub to book in on the Thursday night, and a guy drinking at the bar comes up and says, "Yeah, excuse me, mate, are you the guy who used to do the car racing show on 44?"
Used to.
Well, we're not on 44 at the moment because we had there was no feedback, and because it all came together very quickly, I didn't get in touch with them and say, "Hey, we're coming back. Would you like to have the show again?" So I didn't get. So that was my problem. I didn't get in touch with them and let them know about it. So it's not on there at the moment. And I was surprised over the weekend. So many people who came up and said, why don't we see your show on 44 anymore? Why did they take it off? Well, it wasn't 44 that took it off. It was just I didn't get around to offering it to them. I didn't let them know it was coming back because basically we didn't. Let's face it, we didn't know until about 4 days before. So.
Unbelievable. So really, he's gone over and he's checked out the studios over there. We're shifting the show completely over to South Australia next week, and we don't even know it yet. We're all going to get a jab, which we think is just a COVID jab, and basically we're all going to get put into a bloody timber crate, all knocked out like a bloody damn well out going to the vets at the zoo, and we're all going to wake up in the studio over in South Australia.
I tell you what.
Yeah, okay. Let's just hope it's not going by Australia Post. Otherwise, it'll go around the country several times before it gets
war started.
What?
Yes.
Could be. What?
Isn't this how Saw started?
Oh. Yeah. Yes, it was. Yes, the film. Yes, that was.
Boom,
but
boom.
I mean, there's certainly plenty happening over there. I mean, I'd like to have a look at there because I mean, well, both Doc and Stuart. I mean, you've both been to the Bend, or Doc went for a race meeting, and Stuart, you called in on the way back from Rags from Adelaide.
I got 3 days of Asia Le Mans. Boom, boom.
Yeah, I'm hoping they're going to make the announcement on that fairly soon. I know they desperately want to come back, and obviously they're waiting for all this nonsense to hopefully settle down. But I'm 90% sure that we will see another round of the Asian Le Mans Series back at the Bend sometime within the next, perhaps even in the next 12 months. So keep our fingers crossed for that because I just couldn't afford to get across this time around, but. Really would like to get across get across next time. Doc, MotoGP.
Yeah, I saw a little snippet of Jack Miller interview where they were asking those obscure, funny, joking around questions, but they threw a couple of serious ones in as usual. And I think he's homesick a little bit because they asked him what his favourite track was in Australia. Most favourite track in the whole of the world. In Italian style. She had a bit of an accent, the lovely girl interviewing, and he mentioned Phillip Island. So he said, bar none. Phillip Island, favourite track in the world, loves going there, the sweeping. He also mentioned he loves his left-handers, which Phillip Island has a majority of as well over there. There was a bit of controversy in qualifying, which I will touch on. Won't drabble on about forever, but 3 riders at least had their qualifying time scrapped because of a red flag. And they looked, it was completely within the rules. Pecco Bagnaia was actually going to set a new lap record in qualifying, and a couple of other riders would have qualified higher as well, though, too. Bagnaia ended up starting, I think, 11th on the grid because his best qualifying time was scrapped. I think it was Vignales that had an off, or one of the riders had an off and red flag. Obviously the qualifying time session they have. So if you're, even if you're only just a split second from the finish line, bang, your qualifying time's gone. And the other thing as well too, I think it came up in supercars or something else on the weekend. So this whole thing about yellow flags going around the track, we've discussed it before on in-pit lane, probably needs to go a little bit further with some of the authoritative versions of each category in sport. Get those big yellow, big square boxes and have them flashing at an agreed amount and time frame and interval, so that way these people can back off, because that's the whole idea of it in the first place. For safety is for the competitors to back off on the track so they don't go hitting somebody else or causing carnage or whatever it meant. But do it when there's obviously going to be something else on the track that shouldn't be there. So thanks, KP. The bill's in the mail. I hope the Australia Post style will be late as well, though, too. Getting back to the race, I'll do the short version of it. Really riveting, absolutely sensational. There was scraps going on probably all the way through the race to almost to the end. Jackie Miller crashed out about halfway through. I think it was about lap 12 or thereabouts. He was competitive up to that point, probably the top 5, top 6. Trying to make his tyres last. Really got fun, but it's just awesome just to watch. You don't want to take your eyes off MotoGP at the moment. If you can't watch it live late in the evenings or early mornings, it's been for the first couple of races in Qatar, catch it and tape it or something like that on a hard drive, because they're just saying it's like a Moto3 race where they're all just in single file. Sometimes there's someone's cutting each other up, there's passing. They're on a track on the weekend that was it's called the roller coaster. I won't go into too much detail. So there was a lot of undulation, lots of fun, lots of curves. The Suzukis are still strong. The Yamahas are cornering the best. Ducatis have got the power down the straights plus the whole shot. And it's all coming to a great finish at the end too. You got a lap or two to go and you still don't know who's going to come second or first. There's a lot of carnage as well too. A lot of tyres going off. It was very hot over there on the weekend in Portugal. So it was just an absolute great race. Looking forward to the Red Bull Ring in 2 weeks' time, where they don't think the Ducatis will be as strong, and the Suzukis are still super consistent. The GXXR, and it's just great. Mers in it. There's probably, you could throw a blanket over. Quartararo is exceptionally strong at the moment. He's back to his 2019 form back in his early days when he first broke into the category 2018, 2019, where his confidence up. And he said there in his post interview at the end of the race that he is feeling really super confident with the front tyre at the moment. He says he knows it's there. He knows it's safe. It's going to hold on. So he's just pushing as hard as he can. The only probably I have to bring it up again this week is the doctor himself, Mr. Valentino Rossi. They're asking the question: Is he tarnishing his career now? Technically, the official version is that he's on a 2-year-old bike, because Morbidelli's on the same as well, though too. But Morbidelli was in the top 5, top 4. Only a couple of seconds off the pace, lapping at almost the 139s by the end of the race, almost as quick. So it's great, and they're all pushing each other. It's lots of fun. It's great. It's the most fun you can have with a motor between your legs.
And of course, Mark Marquez came back, finished 7th. So not a bad return. I mean, there were a few people suspecting that we would turn back and instantly run away with it, but it's not quite that simple, is it? And I mean, that just adds another layer to the complexity of it. I mean, it's got to be the most unpredictable of international motorsport championships at the moment.
Oh, it's excellent. It's just the conjecture, the fanfare, the predictions. You can say something, and they could just lose a front tyre like they're in the wet any second. Marc Marquez, he looked the end of the race tired, hot, probably a little bit disappointed in himself, but I think he should have been pleased. The Hondas cashed in really because of the the other competitors, a few of them crashing out in the top 5 at the time. But I think he should be really happy with it. He was competitive. He went through the race. He got through it safely. He might have been holding his arm a little bit towards the end as he was taking his gear off. But when you've got a shattered shoulder, or shattered elbow, shattered arm, the whole works, he should be pretty pleased on where he come from. I think it'll just be a rebuilding season for him. If he's in the top 2, top 3, top 5 in the next couple of races, you'd have to be a bonus. And the whole pit crew gave him a round of applause when he got off the bike and he walked in and sat down. So he's definitely got the team behind him, and they're really happy to have him back out there. And just incidental, we joke about the Brabhams and of course the Janes and that sort of stuff. There was 3 sets of brothers out there in MotoGP on the weekend, the Premier Class. Valentino's brother was racing, the Espargaros were racing, and of course the Marquez brothers. So it's dominated. It's a family affair at the moment in MotoGP, but they are turning on a show.
And Remy Gardner's still doing well in Moto 2.
He certainly is.
So so he's somebody that we can look at to the future. And I mean, right throughout the whole the 3 categories that we see. I mean, down to Moto 3, just great racing and just lots and lots of stories. You get right throughout the whole series. So it's certainly, if you're a bit jaded, if you got a bit jaded about Formula 1 and 4-wheel racing, there's certainly plenty of exciting things happening on two-wheel racing at the moment in the world of MotoGP. Hey, that's we're sort of coming to the end of the program, guys. But before we go, anything anybody else wants to quickly raise before we take off?
Just to get back to supercars, I'm pleased they're going to review the use of the qualifying system that they used at Simmons Plains, because it was confusing. They're using the aggregate system. They didn't know who got the pole straight away, and it was just confusing. I think it would be better. I understand why they did it from a safety point of view, but I think it would be better to have an all-in. And
I think that the other thing that came out of the weekend I heard, because I didn't obviously get a chance to see it, and thanks Tony, was Marcus Ambrose's performance.
He did really well.
Yeah, it's no great surprise. I mean, Marcus has always been a good communicator. I mean, I remember when we interviewed him way back in the day that he was always very comfortable in front of a camera. He was always very friendly. He always gave good guests, as we say. So he was. It'd be good to see him. It'd be good to see him with all of his years of experience in both supercars and, of course, what he picked up overseas in the States in NASCAR.
They'd chew you up and spit you out if you didn't actually perform over there, wouldn't they, Brett?
And he was incredibly popular in NASCAR. He was very popular, especially with the media, because he was such a good communicator. He was so friendly with everybody. So he would be a good get. I don't know whether he actually wants to sort of going to see.
Well, he's just engineering for Brett Owen, his mate there in the TCs, in the touring car TCMs at the moment. So he's obviously got a little bit of a feel for it again, and they probably said, "Oh, look, you can jump on camera." But as you said, the Americans would have chewed him up and spit him out if over there if he didn't perform and at least be entertaining and give him that. So he, as you said, he was always a good rep over here in Australia. He just would have refined it when he was American and come back. It's just old hat for him, wouldn't it be, Brett?
Yeah, I think he's a natural in front of a camera and certainly knows his stuff, and that's what you need. And it's nice to have someone who actually does know what they're talking about in that role. I mean, we've seen obviously with Mark Larkham. I mean, just how popular he is, and it's because he knows his stuff. And then Marcus would be exactly the same.
And he doesn't overhype it. He didn't overhype it. He was just straightforward. He didn't, use hyperbole.
God knows we need that on supercar coverage, because there's enough sort of there's enough overhyping going on for that's good. That's good news.
Oh, just the reactions themselves on camera, the overreaction sometimes. But they play it up, and they realise they're doing that in world sport, so you can't complain. Just as a side note, Brett, I know how much a bat and ball fan you are. Pat Cummins whacked around 30 off and over in the IPL overnight, and 66 he accumulated. And they still lost for the Kolkata Knight Riders, I think they're still known as.
Yeah, I haven't caught up. I haven't really had, because I haven't had time to catch up, and I'm not really big on the IPL because it's once again it's a bit like supercars in the WWE. I mean, it's a bit sort of a sports entertainment. It's not real sport. They're not real teams. It's just it's a bit of hit and giggle, but it's quite fun to watch. Like people like Pat Cummins and Glenn Maxwell when he gets a run on. But so there is still a little bit of cricket around. The English season is starting up again too. I saw a little bit of just the other night. I happened to flick around on YouTube and found a live stream of a county match somewhere, so I watched a bit of that. So that was certainly stuff happening with all sorts of sports going up. Incidentally, as I said before, when the show started, we're at the Mr. Boogeyman Bar every Wednesday at around 8 o'clock to 8:30. We go, the band goes live on stage, and this week we're coming up. We've made the commitment. We're going to actually live stream the concert coming up this week on Wednesday. But if you're in Melbourne, we would love you to come down to 160 Hoddle Street, Collingwood, the Mr. Boogeyman Bar. If you don't know what we're doing, well, over 25 years of In-Pit Lane, live music has been an important part of what we do here. And as we can't get into the studio, well, we found a new home for our live music here on In-Pit Lane. Every Wednesday night, starting April the 7th, we're here at the Mr. Boogeyman Bar at 160 Hoddle Street in Collingwood, right next to the Collingwood Town Hall, and we'd love you to join us every single week. Now, this place... Yes, indeed. Go Rautistic. They're one of the bands that regularly perform at the Mr. Boogeyman Bar, and we had a great night on Wednesday with the Mason boys. They were just they were just fantastic. So you'll see that next week. And there's some of the footage that Stuart has hooked up there. You can see them, and you'll hear them. They'll be coming up with one of their songs on In-Pit Lane in a couple of weeks' time as well. But we'd love you to come down. And if you can't make it down, then be watching here on the In-Pit Lane YouTube channel next Wednesday night at 8:30, and we will be streaming our concert live from the Mr. Boogeyman Bar as well. Also, if you missed tonight's program on Channel 31, or if you're interstate and you couldn't get a good copy of it, you couldn't see it, watch it on the Channel 31 website. I noticed when I went back today there, for some reason the stream on the 31 website is in very low resolution. So we will be once we've finished here, I'm going to be uploading tonight's show, the first Mallala show focusing on historic sports sedans. I'm going to load that up, and that will be a premiere tomorrow night at 6:30. So 6:30 tomorrow night on the In-Pit Lane YouTube channel, you'll be able to see in full the program that went to air tonight from my weekend at Mallala, which was lots of fun. And as I said, next week there will be more stuff from Mallala. We'll catch up with Spencer Martin, the Australian motorsport legend. He's just released a new book, and we caught up with him at Mallala. And we're also, speaking of sports sedans, there was a sports sedan there. Well, it wasn't a sports sedan, and it certainly didn't look or sound historic, but it was a genuine IMSA Mazda RX-7, a wild-looking and wild-sounding thing, and we're going to feature that on next week's show as well. And as I said, of course, the feature on Elfin as well. And that's all next week on In-Pit Lane. Yes, Doc?
That Mazda RX-7, it's got its original motor in it, Brett? Just throwing
Not
it out
quite.
there?
Not quite. No.
Just doesn't have a little rotary in it, like it just little.
Well,
let's say
it's got a big rotary in it.
Big roadie. Okay, all right.
Big
not little rotations, big rotations.
Big rotations, and many of them. It sounded fantastic. It's great. But as I said, had an absolutely fantastic, fantastic weekend. Okay, let's hit off. Let's hit off there. Like, is that why Stuart's growing his hair? There you go. We hadn't noticed Stuart growing his hair.
I'm just too slack to have gone and had a haircut.
Battle jackets are optional on Wednesday nights at the Mr. Boogeyman bar. No, the three bands, we had hard metal on last week.
Not always metal.
Yeah, but I was going to say last week was they call themselves Southern Australian Country. So obviously we're down in Victoria, but last week was a little, I'd probably call it a borderline hard rock, not quite even metal as well too.
Yeah, we had first week and was sort of jazz, more
was the 6-piece. Yeah,
swing.
So we're just sticking to the traditional in pit lane plan. We are inclusive, and the variety is for everyone. You've got to be able to understand what they're singing to the naked ear.
Well, not necessarily, but anyway, we'll get that. Mark, thank you, Mark, once again for watching, and thanks for your help on the weekend too. Really, really do appreciate that. And as you see,
you're the man, Mark.
Hope you enjoy the show when you see it if you haven't seen it already. So and tell everyone in South Australia that it will be available tomorrow night. Well, it will be 6:00 your time tomorrow night on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. But until that's all we got time for this week on Full Course Yellow. Thanks for joining us once again at a slightly later time. Hope it's not too late for you, but we're all going off before we turn into pumpkins. We're heading off. So from all of us here at Full Course Yellow and In Pit Lane, it's once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week, 9:30, straight after In Pit Lane on Channel 31. So until then, thanks for joining us, and bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.